It's one of those few moments in the life of the Catholic Church when the whole world is watching. The papal apartment is empty, the Sistine Chapel is being prepared, and the cardinals are discussing the state of the Church and the profile of the next pope. Those discussions are completely private. The cardinals have even taken an oath not to share any information about the conclave and the candidates they're considering. But some journalists have been in Rome long enough to understand the different forces at work. They know the structures, the formulas, the rituals, but most importantly, they know the human beings involved. And in times like these, their perspective becomes invaluable. One of these journalists is Jerry O'Connell. Born in Ireland and a graduate of Cambridge University, he's been reporting on Vatican affairs since 1985. I had the chance to sit down with him recently for an interview. The cardinals are discussing very serious issues in the life of the Church today here in Rome. One of those issues is the question of governance here at the Vatican. Can you frame that question for us? When the cardinals say we have questions or we have concerns about governance here, what do they mean?
Well, first of all, the Vatican, like any government, the Pope, like any head of state, has a civil service. In the Vatican here, a civil service with different departments, about 1,000 people working in them. And the question is that this has been a dysfunctional government in the past period, especially under Benedict XVI, but also previously. John Paul II had his own system of government, and I'll speak about that in a second. But really, it's always been a question, right back to Paul VI. Paul VI was elected during the Second Vatican Council in 1963. He had worked all his life inside in the Vatican. And one of his major tasks, as he saw it in terms of the central government of the Church, was to change the internal structure. John Paul II also tried to change the internal structure. But he was an outsider. He came from Poland, he'd never worked in the Vatican, and so he developed his own particular system of government. He placed Poles, Polish prelates, Polish priests in every department of the Vatican. And so they responded directly to his private secretary. So he had a good idea of what was happening. So he had a parallel system of government in a sense. You had the official structure and then you had the Polish overlay. When Ratzinger became Pope, when he was elected in 2005, he had said several years before he was elected, he said, I have no talent for sport, no talent for organization, no talent for administration. It was known when he was Archbishop of Munich that he delegated much of the government to his number two. When he was in the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith for more than 20 years, he also delegated all the personnel administration questions to his number two. When he became Pope, he did the same. He delegated to his Secretary of State. The problem was the Secretary of State did not have great talent for government either. And so you had, in the 2005 conclave, after John Paul II was elected, the cardinals had identified one problem. You must have coordination and communication within the different departments of the Roman Curia, the Vatican Civil Service. This, however, did not happen in the 8 years of the pontificate of John Paul, of Benedict XVI. And so you had many problems. And they culminated with the leaks, the Vati leaks, the leaking of the confidential documents from the Pope's own apartment. And this reflected the internal problems, tensions, accusations of corruption, many other problems. Now, obviously, the Catholic Church, the central government, is like any central government. While it's based on faith and belief, it's men who are running it. I remember one African cardinal said to me, if God wanted a perfect central government, he would have appointed angels, not men. So when you have men, you have the dynamics in any organization, and you have tensions, you have different visions, you have different, but it's a question of how you harmonize, how you bring these together. Every government in any country has, every prime minister has the same problems. How does he harmonize the different points of view, the different tensions? And so you have this in the Catholic Church too.
You mentioned that at the conclave or pre-conclave meetings in 2005, one of the concerns was communication between different departments
And coordination.
here at the Vatican. And that, from speaking to the cardinals here in 2013, a lot of them have the same question. What has happened over the last 8 years? I mean, what's the feeling amongst the cardinals? They must be aware, or some of them must be aware, that this is a very similar question that they were dealing with 8 years ago. Is it the same question today?
Well, the situation has deteriorated.
Testing
Because you've had these confidential
the
leaks from the
pickup mic.
documents. You've had the exposure in
Nghe rõ không Bình?
of real clashes and contrasts and accusations of corruption. So the situation is disturbing. So that a bishop, for example, in any part of Canada, he writes a letter.
Pickup mic.
Is he sure that that letter will not end up in the Italian media some weeks later? A nuncio, the Vatican's ambassador.
This is the other mic.
Is he sure that that confidential
Okay.
How about a pickup mic?
This has touched the heart of
Pick up
government,
mic again.
the leaks, and also the exposure of tensions. Now, many people say this has been an Italian problem because all the actors have been mainly Italian. But there is real concern among the cardinals. They say, if we have a malfunctioning, dysfunctional central government, this is going to impact on the church in the far distant lands. I was in China last year, and I met people there, and they said, well, bishops here, they are worried about sending a letter to Rome because Beijing will go in the way.
Đây nó có cái lập theo
This is what
mic
they
đó nhé.
fear. It's clear the cardinals
Cái này là cái lập theo microphone.
Cái này cũng là cái microphone luôn.
something that
Đây là cái này.
Cái dây đó.
before the conference. They want
Cái này nhé.
Dạ.
Cái này là pick up cái audience. Cái này mình sẽ connect vô cái PA system.
Ồ chứ không vậy từ tránh vào áo để cho mình nói. Dạ. Dạ. Vậy thì cháu thường nói vào đây hả bạn? Được không bác? Nghe cháu nói không? Nó có rè không bác hay là nó cũng bình thường? Dạ vâng. Dạ vâng. Alo, 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 alo. Dạ rồi. Dạ vâng. Dạ vâng, đúng rồi.
just as happened with the WikiLeaks.
Vâng. Bác muốn cháu ra đây nói ngoài đây à? Vậy cháu bỏ cái này lại nhé. Alo, bác nghe cháu nói không? Alo, 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 alo. Dạ vâng. Cháu thấy rồi. Dạ. Nhưng mà hai cái micro kia chậm 5 phút thì 5 giây thì cái này phải chậm 5 giây chứ không có khán giả lại trước. Khán giả cười trước khi cha nó.
Given many of the problems, many of the crises.
Well, the Catholic Church is an international body. It has, as the Vatican, the Holy See, which is the central government of the Catholic Church, it has relations with more than 170 states. It has diplomatic relations. So these countries have ambassadors here to the Holy See, to the Vatican, and the Vatican has nuncios, ambassadors to these countries. And you have interchange at governmental level between governments and the Holy See. And so it's very important that a government, you can think of situations like the Palestinian-Israeli question. You can think of situations today like in Syria, or you can think of Nigeria, or you can think of maybe some relations with Pakistan, or with China. And if the confidential communications between the central government of one of these countries and the Holy See. It becomes a matter of public disclosure. You cannot really conduct business.
Talk about the significance of Pope Benedict's resignation in all of this. He threw everybody for a loop. Nobody was expecting him to make this decision. How does that fit in to this whole picture that you're painting for us?
Well, he'd obviously had the idea in his mind for a long time, because I remember 2002, 2003, when people asked him, then Cardinal Ratzinger, should John Paul II resign when he was very ill? He said, no, he should not resign, but I can see a future Pope might resign for some reason. And then in the interview book in 2010, he spoke personally about the possibility of resignation. But this is really a break with a 600-year-old tradition that the Pope didn't resign. It's an earthquake into the system. But it has enormous significance, because it means now that, for example, the cardinals, when they go to elect the next Pope, they have the possibility of deciding. We can elect an older man because we know that he will not feel obliged to have this job for life. We can equally elect a younger man for on the same rationale. But it went beyond that. It gave a lesson to people both in religious life and in state life, that holding on to positions of power, prestige, and influence is not really what the center of human life is about. And in this respect, Benedict has given a lesson, first of all to the College of Cardinals, bishops of the Catholic Church, the leaders of the Church, but also in the wider world, that one has to somehow understand that when one is in a position of responsibility and power, it is a service to the Church or to the community. And one must not consider this as one's own personal, private, privilege, status, power.
The question of governance and the question of Benedict's resignation are certainly not the only questions that are being raised. What are some of the other big topics that are on the agenda among the cardinals at this time?
I think
Tại vì mình để cái trên cái laptop ở trong, cho nên nó có thể nó pick up cái noise from cái laptop.
You have 50% of the world's population living in Asia. In the West, you have a problem of decline, where many people are into the church. And there the question of the problem is, how do you revive the faith? How do you give people new confidence in the church? And this goes back also to the question of governance. Because if people do not have faith in the central government, they're not going to have faith much in the local church. So that's one big area, the question of how do you bring the good news to people? The second question is, of course, the relations between religions in the world. 1 in 3 people in the world are Christian. 1 in 6 is a Muslim. 1 in 8 is a Hindu. So the question of the interrelations between religions, then there are Buddhists. How do you relate to the other religions? This is a big question for the cardinals, as they need, and for the future Pope. How does the Catholic Church relate to the other religions? The essence of true religion is to bring peace and harmony between people and to construct a more human society. The new Pope will have to follow. how do you reach out to the young people also? I remember I was with John Paul II when he came to Canada, reaching out to the young people. In his pontificate, John Paul II met, I calculated, 25 million young people in different parts of the world. Benedict followed this in a way he looked like an orphan, but the young people adopted him, and then he became like their grandfather, whom they related. So when he went to Sydney, and when he went to Madrid, and at the end he was connecting with these young people. This is very important that the future Pope can continue this. The cardinals are very well aware of this because many of them, most of them, older men. And in fact, in history, Pope has tended to be older. In the last 400 years, only 20 popes have been under the age of 58. It's a question of mindset and way of being open. And I think the cardinals I've spoken to, they're conscious that the problem of the central government of the church is a key issue. But they're also very conscious that we must find a candidate who can connect with the ordinary people on the street, and especially with the younger generations, because the younger generations are the future of the world. You were saying one of the problems they're discussing, they're also looking at who is the man of faith, the man of God, who really communicates God. I remember traveling with John Paul II and feeling when we was meeting on the flights, you felt somehow you were meeting a man who was bridging two worlds, this world and the next. And you had this sensation meeting him. And then you've seen at the end of Benedict's reign how he's emerged really as a religious leader, as a man of faith, as a man of God. This has been, I think, what the cardinals will also be looking for. Who among them can really communicate that spiritual sense, spiritual vision to the world?
This is one of those very unique moments when the world's eyes are on Rome, are looking at the Vatican. And journalists and media that would otherwise not be interested in the day-to-day dealings and functioning of the Catholic Church are interested. As someone who's covered the Vatican for a long time, how do you assess secular media's portrayal of what's going on here these days?
It shows that there's, first of all, an interest in the Vatican, in the Pope, in religion in the world. There's something that attracts. Of course, the motives may be different, but everybody is conscious that the Pope is a very significant figure in the world. So it means that somehow people have beyond their material and political interest, there is this religious angle. They don't quite understand it. Many journalists, colleagues have been parachuted in without having a little idea of this subject. And it's difficult for them to understand. It's difficult for them to report because they don't have much time to put together a story. Their editors are pushing, they want 1 page, 2 page, or they want news clips. And so I think they struggle. So I have sympathy for many people who come in from the outside. Understanding the Vatican is already a complex thing even for many Catholics, even bishops. So imagine what it is for a secular journalist who comes in.
Test mấy cái này là ngày mai chắc mình dùng. Cái này bây giờ em set up vậy này, để cháu chỉ adjust cái này để cháu turn thôi. Cái khó nhất của cái video đó là cái audio, tức là cái sound đó.
Nhưng mà có cái nào cái audio đi trước với sound đi sau không bạn?
Audio với sound là một đó. Cái video tức là hình nhé. Audio là âm thanh. Thì
nhưng mà nhiều khi tôi coi TV thì thấy cái tiếng trước xong rồi hành động trước rồi tiếng sau đó. Nó không có sync đấy.
Thì tùy cái người họ, cái system của mình thì đa số cái đó nó không phải là problem. Cái problem là cái low quality của cái sound đó. Dạ.
Cái Mac ấy ngày xưa bác có ấy cái nhà.
Đúng không? Bác sửa thành, bác lấy hai cái làm hai cái đèn.
Cái đèn hả bác?
Hai cái lamp. Nhưng sao bác gặp bác làm cái đồ này?
Công phu nha.
Không có gì đâu. Chạy cái dây dưới này vô. Professional IT next level. Cái này là hacking. Cái này còn hơn hacking. Mà có cái này dễ lắm, YouTube nó chỉ cho mình chậm. Ok. Vậy là
Tuyệt vời.
cái này là xong rồi. Xong rồi. Kìa cháu nói đúng á. Cái sao này nó bị sao á. Nó rẻ quá. Bác muốn adjust nó xuống á, mà nó vẫn adjust nó mà nó vẫn bị cao. Có thể mai mình adjust nó low. Hôm nay dùng mấy hôm mà dùng để zoom á, nó chẳng có vấn đề gì. Tự nhiên là hôm nay là dùng cho cái video này là nó bắt đầu nó áp thấp. Dao là đeo đời rồi. Cũng cái cao này chắc phải 6-7 năm rồi. Nhưng mà dùng để livestream thì không có problem, nó chạy cái i7. Vâng, tốt lành, không có issue. Chắc không chút chân vui rồi.